Good morning and welcome to the second session for today's MediWales Connects NHS Collaboration Conference. This is intended to be a more interactive session than the one we've just left. We've just had an excellent start to the day with an overview of innovation activity right across Wales. We covered all the health boards and collaborations, so that was an absolute delight. So the next hour is more interactive. It's an opportunity to discuss and to share knowledge and expertise. I will tell you that this session is being recorded, and we will be intending to share it on our YouTube platform. So given that we are talking about innovation, intellectual property, finance and product development, I would just like that to be to make you aware of that before we start. And I would just like to make a couple of notes, just for those of you who weren't involved in our previous session. This is an interactive meeting style format, so people will have the opportunity to turn on their cameras to ask questions in person. But we will do a little bit of management, a little bit of triage. So you can use the chat if you want to ask a question, and then we can bring you up to discuss it if any further detail is needed. And please use the chat anyway. Use the chat to introduce yourself. Put your web links in. Put any links to interesting documents or websites that you think will benefit this discussion. And please do feel free to get involved in any way. So I'm going to go through the speakers. Although Sean is first on my list, I'm going to give Sean a little bit of a breather because he's just been helping us in the last session, and I'm going to go to the next on the list, and I'm going to ask Melissa from Betsy Cadwallader, the University Health Board, just to introduce yourself, Melissa, and to tell us what you do and how do you get involved in innovation.
Okay. Hi everybody, I'm Melissa. I'm an innovation project manager in BCUHB. My background is that I've been a nurse for the last 38 years. Also sort of wandered off at one point and went and did a psychology degree. After that, became a research nurse, worked as a research nurse for about 12 years with a particular interest in primary care. Went back to clinical duties for a couple of years and then came into post supporting innovation about 18 months ago in Betsy. Very interesting time. I love you, Sean. Very, very interesting time to come back. I think I had a couple of months sort of finding my feet. And sort of finding out how the larger Welsh infrastructure worked, supporting innovation and getting to know a bit about the Bevan Commission, MediWales, Life Sciences Hub, and trying to work out how all these organisations work together. Then, of course, COVID hit. So it's been sort of all hands on deck since then. So it's been a fast learn. I'm by no means an expert. I think you've oversold me a bit there, Gwyn. But I am very, very happy to talk about how we can forge links with industry to help us all look at addressing patients' problems in the future. And yeah, open to any questions. Thank you.
So I've definitely not oversold you, Melissa. Sorry, I had a little glitch there in my IT. Seems to be de rigueur for this type of event. Sorry, no, definitely not oversold you, Melissa. I know that you're up to your neck in innovation projects on a daily basis. So
And can I just say as well, I'm also partially seconded by Agri IP based over in Swansea Uni. So I'm their sort of person on the ground in Betsy. So I combine that with my Betsy R&I role.
Doing some Agor outreach and collaboration, which is the theme of today. So, yes, it's excellent to highlight those links. So I'm going to move on to introduce the next person, Mark Hemlich from GX Mark, would you like to just give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself and your organisation? I lost Mark.
Right, I could unmute myself. I thought you had to do it. Not a great start. Hi, yeah, I'm Mark Helmich. I'm the Manager Director of the GX Group of Companies based in Usk. So we offer product design services to industry and startups. Been going for 36 years as of this year, started in 1985. We've worked for sort of multinational corporations like Bayer, do work for Olympus, Gyrus Medical, also do a lot of work for startups and entrepreneurs. We offer a complete design service, so it's everything from mechanical engineering, industrial design, software, electronics, and app development. So we're kind of a one-stop shop. There's only really two companies of our type in Wales. The other one is in North Wales. Give a shout out to a competitor, Design Reality, who've we've worked closely with over the years. We tend to source as much as possible locally. So we work with companies like Drumlord up in Cwmcan to produce prototypes and models along the way. So it's a full turnkey product development service.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mark. And Mark helped open the session for us yesterday with a case study example of his work with Lucerne, who've developed a product that was a spin out of University of South Wales. And as part of that conversation, it really became clear that GX provide expertise in product development on a technical side, but clearly through that project, Mark's knowledge and his team's knowledge of the local supply chain and collaborators and organisations, companies, manufacturers in Wales really became an asset to that project and resulted in what was essentially an all Wales design, development, manufacturing project. So maybe we'll pick up on that a little bit during this session, Mark. So now I'm going to hand over to Simon Haslam, Able and Imre patent attorneys. Simon.
Hi, Gwyn, thanks for that. I'm Simon Haslam. I'm a patent or patent attorney with Able and Imre. We're trademark attorneys as well, so we basically protect your inventions and your brands. That's what we do in a nutshell. Personally, I've been involved in innovation for many years. I was a research scientist with what is now Kinetic, working on liquid crystal display technology, and I've got my name on quite a few patents, probably none of which the technology is not used anymore. So I've been working in innovation from the research side, and I've been in patents now for just over 20 years. So I've been helping protect people's inventions for a good time too. That's me done, Gwyn.
Excellent. And Simon, I sit in a lot of meetings with Sean and Melissa, where we're talking about innovation and trying to push, cajole, and encourage innovation projects through the process. And you're never far from my mind in terms of when people say, how are we going to find some IP expertise, or who should we ask for a bit of advice on intellectual property? So it's good to have you in the room and to introduce you to the rest of the panel, because I know that you are you're involved. You're as involved in a lot of the projects that we see as a lot of other people, but possibly in a different capacity of providing intellectual property expertise to the companies that we all know. So welcome. And then so we've got product development, we've got intellectual property, so we need to complete the triad, and it's my pleasure to introduce Mike Fenwick from Verdi Corporate Finance. And Mike, you're going to answer all questions finance, I understand.
Absolutely. Good morning, Gwyn. Morning, everyone. And I guess I'm a chartered accountant by background, so you'll gather from that I'm not an innovator, although I've got a very, very sleek, up-to-date calculator that I use to get me through the day. So, you know, that's very important. Yeah, I'm an associate director in the GS Verde Group, and we're a multidisciplinary firm which offers legal services, corporate finance advice, and indeed PR and marketing advice. And in fact, we just acquired a firm of accountants as well. So the idea being we're a one-stop shop for companies who are looking to acquire, dispose, raise finance, etc., which works quite well. We deal with a lot of companies in the life sciences and medtech sectors, and you know, in spite of COVID, that sector has been booming as far as investment has been concerned over the last 12 months. The other end of the spectrum compared to retail and hospitality businesses. We have a number of fundraisers ongoing at the moment with companies in this sector, so it's keeping us busy. So that's
Excellent. Excellent, thank you very much. And I think the group structure of that Verdi has produced does mean that you are able to address quite a lot of the issues. As somebody in the group can help address a number of the issues, whether that's financing or grants or loans. So it's good to have you as part of the ecosystem, because access to finance is something that can hold things up. And there are often two sides to the financing. There's financing projects when they are part of the health service or part of a university, where health service funding support or resource or people becomes the controlling factor. And then when something is launched out into the private sector and into industry, then it's often it's funding that expertise, it's funding the design, it's funding the intellectual property expertise, but then it's also funding the manufacture and the marketing. So absolutely vital for the whole process. Right, so I thought it would be useful if we structured this conversation. Please interrupt me. It's a small panel, so you are more than welcome to interrupt. But I thought it would be useful if we could just take an innovation project from initiation, from concept through to taking it to market and exiting with us all making millions of pounds. So I think it would be sensible. Maybe start with Sean, because I know, Sean, you are there at the beginning of a lot of innovation projects, and I know from the presentations we had from your former home at the Bevan Commission yesterday, we learned that innovation projects in the NHS are complicated. They're not all about product development, and often they're about putting an awful lot of things together in one place and adapting systems and processes as well as developing products. So, Sean, could you give us your top of the head thoughts on just the creation of an innovative project or an innovation project?
Thanks, Gwyn. I thought I might as well introduce myself as well, but
because I skipped you to give you a break.
Because you skipped me to give me a break, which was very nice. But
I apologise.
Okay. So I'm Sean Charles. I work in Arch now. I have for most of my working life, I've spent in projects, program management. I've done a fair bit of organisational development and leadership and service improvement work. And as Gwyn is starting to allude to, then since 2015, I've been supporting innovation and change projects. And I think that one of the big things about change is that people talk about, oh, we need to change, but obviously change normally means something different to what you're used to. And so people are very worried about change often, particularly large scale change, if they don't know where they're going. So there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of lack of predictability in it. So what we set out to do with a number of projects that we've supported has been to support people to try things. So many people will be very familiar with very long and turgid meetings within their own organizations, where everybody talks about the problems over and over again, but they never quite manage to step away from the problem and to do something about it. Often taking actions to go away and investigate the problem some more, to find data, And what we find then, of course, is the data becomes the problem and not the problem itself. So I think if you're looking at innovation, it's best to try things. Don't worry, do it at a scale where it's safe to fail, so that you're not going to kill anybody, you're not going to break the bank. Yeah, move it forward and develop it. Learn from the activity of doing, and that gives you a really strong base to move forward from. I think the other guiding thought that I've sort of developed for myself over the last few years has been that innovation is actually has some very strong similarities in terms of a metaphor to evolution and sort of Darwin's thinking. So don't imagine that your innovation is the only thing out there. You are competing against other people all the time. And so your ability to adapt quickly to circumstance and environment is usually key to the success of whatever it is that you're trying to do. So there's a heavy duty for me of doing, trying, acting at pace, and not worrying too much about failure, because you've set your project, you've set your thinking at a scale initially that allows you to fail quickly and develop your ideas around that.
So is there it sounds like there's a fine balance between you need someone to take ownership and to be enthusiastic to drive things through, but on the other hand, they shouldn't be too precious and too wedded to one solution. They should be prepared to drop it and move on to a better solution if that should arise.
Absolutely. Almost nothing, right? So let me put that in that nothing in context. We've supported 252 projects over the last 6 years to test something new. Now, often that is a technology, it's a widget, it's software. Often it's a service change or a role change. It's practice change within healthcare, right? I can honestly say that almost none. Right? I can't think of any, right? But almost none of those projects are the same at the end of the 12 months of testing and trying than they were at the beginning, right? They have all changed and adapted because their ability to imagine what something looks like in practice is actually quite limited. And as part of that practice of innovating, your ability to adapt your innovation to context is absolutely critical. Absolutely.
And if I was using slides for this conversation, which I'm not, so you'll have to use your imagination, but one slide that I used a lot when I was more involved in product development was just think of a graph, and you've got two axes. One is cost and one is time, and you've got a 45-degree line going through it. And it's a fairly well proven principle that essentially the longer a project runs, the more expensive it gets to make changes. And so if you're at the initiation stage and it is just a concept, then you can change your ideas, you can move on to a different product, you can jump ship, or you can kill it completely. Whereas the longer down the line you get, once you've invested in intellectual property and product development and tooling and materials and manufacturing and marketing, it just gets more and more and more and more expensive to make changes. So to be fleet of foot and lean at the beginning is a principle that is well learned in innovation. Melissa, so you, like Sean, you're often there when clinicians and healthcare workers come up to you and they say, I've got this idea, see? Sorry, that was a bit South Wales, wasn't it? I'm not going to do a North Wales accent. I'll cause offence. But anyway, they come to you and they've got this great idea and they want you to magic it into a product that means that they can buy their sports car and their yacht. So what's your first, how do you open that conversation?
I think you've always got to be really supportive, because it's quite brave to, this isn't these people's day job, as I think you mentioned yesterday. So I think, number one, you've always got to be very supportive and very engaged with them, because they're putting themselves out there by just flagging it up. potentially the next thing I say to them is, have you had a look to see if anything like this already exists? Because what we don't want to be doing is wasting time and resource reinventing the wheel. I can support them with having a quick search to see whatever else is out there. It could be that there are similar products or whatever available, but theirs has a unique selling point, something that we could build and develop on, and this is part of that evolution. Then I sort of need to know where do they see it going? And sometimes they haven't sort of thought that far. So I'll sort of say, is this something that you would like to see spread all over Wales? Is it something you'd like to see commercialised? Is it something that you just want to put out there for the public good? You know, and I'm thinking of free apps on the App Store and things like that. But I need to have an understanding. If they haven't thought about it, I need to help them explore what their options are. So once we've had those conversations, then I can start thinking, where can I get support within the infrastructure? Who do I need to reach out to look at how we best support this? Obviously, I also am going to need to make them aware of things like our health board's IP policy, because if this is an idea that they have generated during their current work day, then potentially the health board are going to have some say around the IP. But we don't want that to be a stifling factor. We really don't. So then I'm going to start thinking, right, and with that person's permission, I'm going to start reaching out. Ideally, we've got a health hack coming up, or we've got a call from Life Sciences Hub for some sort of innovative award. And the benefit of that, if there's something already open, there may already be funding attached to that, because obviously you're not going to be able to develop this for nothing. So you've got to start having those conversations about how are we going to support this development? Is there any funding calls open? Can we collaborate with anybody in pulling some of that funding down? Agga IP do a couple of calls a year looking for products that have the potential to commercialise. The Health Hack has, well, we ran 3 in the last 12 months, or just over the 12 months. And that was just looking for challenges within the health board and looking at partnering people up to win kickstart funding and get expertise and support in development. So that's how I would sort of start. Obviously, sometimes it's not a member of health board staff coming to me. It can sometimes be one of our industry partners coming and saying, actually, we've got a bit of kit, Melissa, and we've got it to here, but actually we now need some beta testing, some usability feedback, or we've got a bit of kit that we're using for this, but we think potentially it could now extend and be used for that. And during COVID, I had a lot of contact from inventors, innovators, you know, industry people who had a gadget or a widget, as Sean would call it, and they thought it may have COVID potential. So what we sort of did in Betsy was based around risk, and we've got to be sensible about risk. We did some rapid COVID product evaluations and supported the governance and the risk management about that. So we were able to either go back to that innovator and say, actually, no, you know, your hypothesis didn't work, or actually, yes, let's now apply for some collaborative funding and look at how we develop this. So I don't know if that's answered you, Gwyn.
It's a really valuable answer. You've raised as many questions as you've answered there, so that's great for the start of the session. But yeah, you're just touching on a number of topics in that first conversation, and one of them definitely being, are you sure there's nothing out there already? I think my question after that would be, does anyone else need this, or is it just a thing that you want? Because I know some clinicians are quite keen on getting everybody excited about developing a product because they want one. And and so both of those questions, the market research, is it already available? Does somebody produce it? So does it just become a buying project? We still need it, but we can buy one, or is it a product development project? Now, Simon, that's going to be something that that you also, that's obviously question number one when you have clients coming to you, is it not?
What this is, has it been done before?
Yeah.
And as I've posted in the chat, there are lots of places you can look. You can do online searches. There are specialist search organisations. You can search the patent literature, and that's definitely one of the key things. And even if it hasn't been done before, how similar is it to what's out there already? Because you're only going to get a patent if you want a patent. If whatever you're doing hasn't been done before, and if it's sort of a technical innovation, if it's inventive, really, that's one of the key points. The other one tends to be ownership and inventorship. Essentially, who invented, who came up with this idea, and who owns it. So, you know, if a clinician came up with the idea, well, they were working for the NHS or their health board, does the health board own it? Were they working for a university, so does the university own it? That sort of thing. That's probably the two key things. What's the invention? Has it been done before? And three things, sorry. And who owns it? Which you've really got to get sorted out from the start. I mean, that's the key thing. Before any invention gets really valuable, you need to sort who owns what and how much money people are going to get from development of things, that sort of thing. So
I know that the who owns it is an issue, and sometimes a bit of a thorny issue in health boards. It can be as a result of employment contracts or of IP policies within specific health boards. So Sean, could you where are we on that in terms generally for across Wales? Where would we be on somebody innovating and coming up with an idea and wanting to establish whether or not they actually own the IP, or whether they're going to get any benefit from putting in all those extra hours and those weekends of work to get it through to fruition?
It's a very interesting question, Gwyn, and one that we've been trying to work out for quite a while. There are some proper challenges in the system about IP ownership, and a lot of things getting in the way. One of the things that we've been trying to encourage from a government and an NHS perspective over the last couple of years, since the problem certainly revealed itself to me. I think it probably existed and other people knew about it before that, but has been the way that we are able to support people to resolve some of these issues. Right? So much of this is about coming to an agreement about who owns what and who's getting something out of it, right? And if you can come to that agreement, it's all great. The difficulty that we experience is that we don't have anybody that can guide that conversation, and we don't have people within the NHS who are able to formalise that conversation in a contract. So for people, and I talked to Simon briefly about this earlier this week. You know, the opportunity is there to be able to bring people like Simon and others on the panel into this conversation to help resolve the question, because I personally find that IP is one of those things that everybody has an opinion about, but nobody knows the answer. And having people who know the answer, having people who can formalize that answer into some sort of commercial contract, I think is the way forward. The difficulty that we've got at the moment is that we don't know how much of that we've got within the NHS to be making a case for a large team, for example, to support with the various skill sets that we've got on the screen today. So I'd like to take take a little bit of my own medicine on this and say, let's try this small scale. Let's do it for a couple of projects and move that forward, so that we can see what the nature of our solution needs to look like. But at the moment, Gwen, in answer to your question, it is we are struggling with little resources is the answer.
But it's a known or known unknown. Sorry, we
know all about it, but we can't solve it. Yeah.
Absolutely, which is probably better than where we were some time ago, where we didn't realise it was going to come and bite us in the backside until we were discussing millions of pounds, and then it becomes a lot more expensive and a lot more difficult for everybody. So, Mike, obviously, intellectual property ownership. So somebody's come to you and they've said they want to raise millions of pounds in finance. I'm guessing for you, one of the questions is who owns it?
Yep. Yeah, and by its very nature, innovation and innovative products are very risky, and quite often an investor who invests in, let's say, a normal trading company there's a track record of trading for that particular company. They can look back at past year's results and they can take a view in terms of what the future looks like. With a sort of an early stage innovation type project, the view of the future is a lot less certain. So therefore, investors are to a large degree taking a larger risk, although at the end of it there may be a larger incentive or pot of gold or whatever. And I think one of the couple of key things that investors look at when they're looking at these types of projects is, does this product or whatever it might be have the ability to solve a current problem or improve patient outcomes? So I think there has to be a problem identified quite clearly which this innovation or solution solves, and that's quite important for investors to understand that. Another thing, I guess, is investors will invest in people as well. So it's important that they understand who the team are behind this and who the team are who are going to take this to commercialization. And it's important to have both technical innovators on that team, but also people who understand the commerciality and the reality of the commercial world, and therefore have a team with all of those skills on board. Data is also very important to investors. So things like regulatory approval and product registration and data. Now that may not be possible at the very early stage because that's a process that has to go through. But again, the more of that sort of information is around to qualify this opportunity, then the more likely it is to attract to funding. And the other thing, I guess, is that they will obviously look at is the size of the potential market and scalability of of this product or innovation, because at the end of the day, if they invest, they want to make a return on their money, and therefore they will be they will be very interested in whether the management team has looked at that market opportunity, assessed it, and in quite a robust way. So again, that would be of importance to them. And the other point, I guess, is what we just talked about. They like to see people or companies with their ideas protected as far as possible. So the IP element of that is quite important as well.
Excellent, thank you. There's some really good top tips there. Can I just tell everybody else that's in the room, because I did promise an interactive session, that once I've run these people dry of top tips in the first half of this session, I'm going to open the floor, and if you have a look in your menu, there's a raise hand function. So as well as I can see that there's an active conversation going on in the chat, but if you click your raise hand function in the menu there, then I'll know that you want to ask a question, and then we'll turn all the cameras on and the microphones on for the second half, and we'll have a bit more of an open chat. So I really would appreciate that, and I'm already looking at some of the names that have in the participants, and knowing that some of you have got some really valuable contributions to make to this conversation. So please just get chatting and raise your hand. And I've just had a message from Katie on our team, and she says, "Do not turn my camera on." I have no idea why, but rest assured, we can't turn your camera on. We can only ask you to turn it on. So Mark Hemley. So there's so we've established the product is unique. We've established that there is a need for it, and we've established that the innovator or the organisation owns the intellectual property. Mike has sorted out some finance for us. He's got some investment finance, or he's pointed us in the right direction of some grant finance. So we know we can pay the bills. So really, the question is to you, Mark. What then? How do you get a brief out of an innovator that comes to you?
So a lot of innovators will turn up and have the sort of an idea of a product, but no specification really. They kind of know they want something to do a particular function. And I was interested by Sean saying, the iterative process, take a year, try things. Whereas I'd probably argue the reverse is once you've got an idea that you want to get something designed, speak to some experts, because the product we started in May for COVID testing, which we discussed yesterday, we started that in May, and it's an approved product on the market by the following March. So inside a year, you can get from no product to a product on the market, ready for market. And I think there is a lot of recycling of work. So we've talked to a couple of inventors a few years ago. And again, the big thing is always a lack of funding to move things forward. They went round multiple loops with various university departments trying to get their idea done. It was picked up by a PhD student who did some work on it. But I think invariably when you try and get somebody like a PhD student to work on it, they're more concerned probably with the output for their PhD than the output of the product. So I think the first thing I'd say is if you think you've got an idea that's unique and you've got the finance, then get some experts to work on the design. I wouldn't for one instance think of trying to do IP work for people. That's not my field. I wouldn't go and try and raise finance for people. And I wouldn't go into a hospital and expect to be able to undertake surgery. No one wants me undertaking surgery. There always seems to be a slight block on actually going to a design company and saying, can you get this product to market for us? And I don't really know why. Obviously, we come with bills like everyone else. But if you've got to the point where you've got a really good idea for a product, you can protect it in some way, then why not turn around to a design consultancy and say, can you get this product into a marketable position for us, a sellable position? Because the speed at which a design consultancy will act will always outstrip an academic or a research institute, where there's that focus more on constant refinement. And the reality is, every product we've ever designed, we could redesign the following week. As soon as it's got on the market, we could redesign it the following week and improve it. But at some point, you've got to turn around and say, right, we've got to a point now where we really just need to get the product to market. And at that point, you've got to sort of go to the experts and get them to do the work. Like you said, it is an iterative process. And like I said, when you reach the end of every product development, you'll look back at it and go, yeah, okay, so we could have improved that. We could have improved that. But that's the second version or the third version of a product. That's the cycle. Get something on the market, start earning some money, start paying for the investors back. And the best way to do that is to invest in experts in the fields.
Absolutely. And what do you want to know, Mark? So you don't want to waste people's time. You don't want to.
No.
You don't want a bad brief, because you could end up with the wrong product.
Yes.
So could that be a pro forma? Could you have 10 questions that you ask every person that walks through the door, or is it different for every project?
It's kind of different, and the most bizarre one we ever had was a couple from somewhere in Cornwall who contacted us and said they've had a brilliant idea for a product. Can we have a meeting? And we said yes. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it? Before you drive up? No. And even with a non-disclosure agreement, they wouldn't say anything about it. They drove all the way up, came to the office. We made them a cup of tea and a cup of coffee, and they told us what the product was. I picked my phone up, I typed a little search. I said, "What, you mean like that?" And they hadn't managed to find the product that they'd come up with, but it was readily available. They wouldn't even drink their tea and coffee. They got up very upset and disappointed and went back home. So I think asking the experts, if they'd have asked an IP expert, I'm sure the IP expert would have found the product as easily as I did. So making that initial understanding, getting that initial understanding of whether the product is actually unique is key. So generally, our question is always, what are you trying to design? And then we'll do that background check ourselves. We're certainly not going to start trying to design Me Too products. There's no point if you're going to compete with something that's already on the market, that's mass produced. You're fighting a losing battle, and it's in nobody's interests. I mean, yes, we could charge for it, but quite quickly you'll get a very bad reputation that you're basically leading people down the garden path, and nobody wants to do that. So I think speed is kind of key. If you get to the point where you've got an idea for a product and you want to develop it, then let's get on with it rather than wait. And like I said, you can reiterate in a university lab for year after year if you want to, but that's never going to get you to a product on the market. I don't know. Can I share the image of something a minute, or I don't know if it'll work, but.
Well, you should be able to, yeah. I'm just gonna go over a very briefly while you're doing that, Mark. So the project that Mark showcased yesterday, Luzerne, was intellectual property out of the University of South Wales. There was an NHS contact in Tom Powell at Cwmtaf, so innovation lead there, and Mark involved UPG, Welsh company, for manufacturing swabs. This was a point of care diagnostic test, and Biomon produced the assay, another Welsh company. Drumlord did the prototyping, and Axiom are doing the electronics. And they're as if we discussed it ahead of time. There's the product that's been produced and is ready for market. So, Mark, what were you going to mention about it? Have we lost Mark now?
So we spoke to the scientists at the MediWales event in November, who were developing an assay for a urinary tract infection. When the COVID pandemic started early January, they decided they'd switch focus and see if they could get an assay for to detect the COVID virus. They thought they'd manage that, but the device they were testing it on was 25 grand piece of lab equipment, and obviously you're not going to be able to sell £25,000 pieces of lab equipment all over the country to test mass testing. So they asked us whether we could develop a device. That project started, as I said, in May, supported by Welsh government funding, and he said the product was designed from scratch. All designed inside GX, prototyping locally, injection moldings done locally, JC molding in Abergavenny area. So we managed to get from nothing to a product on the market, fully CE marked, in about 9 months. And I think that kind of illustrates the difference. If you're going to spend a year reiterating things in a university lab or in a health board, there's a limit to what you're going to achieve, and at some point you've got to really turn around and say, okay, we've done this for 6 months, for 3 months, 12 months is probably a little long, I'd have thought, if you're spending that long and that much amount of your time when that is not your core discipline. It's
Yeah.
you know, with the best will in the world, he
Yeah.
said, I wouldn't attempt to be a doctor, I wouldn't attempt to be an IP specialist. It's not, it makes no sense. Try and hand things over to experts. There's a few companies like us in Wales, not the only one, but there's a few places to go. Go and speak to them and try and get things moved on a little bit faster. Because all the money you're spending in the first 12 months, you're going to repeat and spend more in the next 9 months from start to finish of a product development anyway.
Yeah. That's very true. And I knew I would as soon as you mentioned that the project was initiated at a MediWales event. I've already had it in the neck from Debbie for not meant. I listed every organisation involved, but I didn't mention MediWales. So collaboration all the way down the line there. Melissa, please.
I mean, that's brilliant. I totally get what you're saying, Mark. And for me, when I get Dr. Jones coming up to me and asking me, I'd love someone with that design expertise and that shrewd eye and experience that I could have a quick call with and say, hang on, is this good or is this a stinker? You know, and you know,
Ring.
You know, if you want a chest drain removing, I'm your person. But that sort of experience I haven't got. But obviously, if there's a cost to that advice, and one of the things, Mark, is that sometimes in health, or certainly when you're looking at this innovation, there can be a call out for a funding award, and you can get thousands and thousands.
Yeah.
And you know, if you put a good plan together and you've got good clinicians and we've got a strategy, we might win it. It's when you're looking for that couple of £100 to just finance it. So I think there's that room for perhaps developing those type of relationships around expertise. And I think Sean's put some questions in there about, you know, sharing risk and sharing reward and perhaps culturing some of those relationships for that expert guidance, with the fact that there might be an investment of some free time in filtering, but that it would pay dividends in the long run.
Do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, so first off, is any initial consultation with us has always been free. So if you want to pick the phone up and ask about something, that's free. Our initial meetings and preparation of proposals for project work is free. If you engage us to start design services, that's when we start getting paid. Obviously, time is always limited. I mean, if we get 20 inquiries a week, and at the moment we're being inundated with inquiries, as I mentioned in the chat, Debbie mentioned herself earlier, the amount of interest in product development at the moment is something I've never seen before. We're getting more inquiries a week than we used to get in a month, and that meeting time is at a premium. But I dare say things will calm down again, and the same will apply anyway. We'll speak to anyone about product development and try and guide people in those initial conversations, and that's never been a service we've charged for. So yes, by all means, just pick up the phone, give me a ring, or speak to Claire Banks, our business development manager, and she'll put you in touch with the right people depending on what the product type is.
Do you want to add to that, Simon? Because I think you're involved in a number of projects, aren't you? Innovation projects.
I mean, all I would say, most professional service organisations will give you an initial consultation free of charge. We're quite happy to spend half an hour having a chat about things. Really, and I think a lot of the time that is all that's needed to help shape how things should go forward.
Would you reflect on that, Mike? Mike, are you on mute?
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yeah. So obviously, from a funding perspective as well, we tend to do sort of initial free consultations, and but I suppose from a funding perspective, it's a little more difficult to establish whether a project has legs from a funding perspective without talking to those potential funders who might be interested. From a technical, and is there something else available out there at the moment? I think that's probably an easier sort of assessment to make. But with funders, you have to go through a due diligence process to sort of ascertain their interest in that. And Sean has just posted up on the chat, about quickly accessing small amounts of funding to try and move things forward. Strangely enough, it's easier sometimes when you're looking at large amounts of funding, and I don't know what you mean by small amounts of funding, Sean. If you're talking about 5 to 10 grand here and there, I'm not quite sure where those sort of things would come from. We have things like the Smart Cymru scheme in Wales, which is due to come to an end next year, and at the moment there doesn't seem to be a replacement for it. Certainly not that I'm aware of. So that things like feasibility studies could be funded through that sort of medium. As far as investors are concerned, they wouldn't put a small amount of funding in. They would invest on a larger scale.
Yeah, I mean, just before we move on from the I think what Melissa and Mark have touched on there is the financing of small projects, basically, and early stage projects, and there is a challenge, and I don't think it's an easy one to resolve. I've tried it from both sides of the equation now. Being on secondment to a public funded organisation and having to adhere to public finance requirements and processes, I've learned just how hard it is to spend a couple of grand on a project by project basis. But equally, having most of my career in the private sector, I absolutely understand that unless companies get paid to do stuff, then they don't pay the salaries and they don't pay the rent. And so it's a real challenge, and I think it's one that I think we've got the right people having the right conversations to come up with some solutions, but I'm not entirely sure what they are. Sean knows what they are because he's got his hand up. Sure.
I'm not sure I got any more answers, or any answers at all. Oh, hello. Am I still on? Yes, there. Right. One of the things that we've been able to do, of course, with through the health hack process of bringing clinicians together with people with expertise to develop solutions, has been to put small amounts of money in. So we've been able to tap into efficiency through technology funding in Welsh Government and distribute sums anywhere between about 5 grand and 20 grand, right? I mean, clearly 5 and 20,000 don't take you to a final product in most cases, and they certainly won't take you to market. But they do help you to reduce the risk and increase the evidence base for something, right? So you get this kind of idea of, oh, all right, give me a little bit of money. I might go to someone like Mark and they could help me to come up with the first design and a prototype. And that might be enough money to tip the balance then into giving large scale investors the belief and the credibility of products, right? So that's what I was looking for, really, was around that kind of little amount of funding that helps you to just take those first couple of steps. And maybe the efficiency through technology funding is one of those ways. I noticed that Naomi was on the call earlier, but she's gone now, but from Accelerate. So Accelerate is in Cardiff University, Swansea University, which is where we partner up, of course, and University of Wales, Trinity St David's. And and they enable access to a whole raft of resources that might help you get past that first point. And then they decide whether to invest more money. I just wondered, really, in some ways, whether the private sector works in similar kind of ways, and whether things like Arch and Accelerate are mirroring other successful models.
Yeah, so a lot of the early stage sort of startup businesses we see are funded by a mixture of, you could well have angel investors in there. So that's private individuals who will put some money in, normally under EIS or SEIS tax breaks. So it's from a tax perspective, it's a very tax effective investment for them. You're quite right. We see quite a lot where the university are involved, and either they will normally have an equity stake in that business, either by the fact that that idea, if you like, was generated within the university, or by virtue of the fact that they're allowing that business to use university facilities as a quid pro quo, if you like, for putting cash in. The other one is grants, obviously. So if businesses are able to access grants, on a smaller scale to start with, then that tends to come into the funding mix. But it's getting a business to that point where they've got validation of data, where they've got proof of concept, where a larger investor will then come on board on that basis, because they can then see a route through to commercialization. Yeah. But yeah, it is it is a challenge, and I'm not quite sure what the answer to that is.
It sounds to me like we between us we could come up with some solutions, and we'd have to put those to other people to actually stump up with the cash. But it is a knotty problem. Right, I'm going to open up to the room a little bit here. So don't be surprised if I pick on you. So Wyn Crompton, I'm fairly confident that you are involved or have been involved in a number of innovation projects, Wyn. So I was just wondering whether you had any thoughts you'd like to share. Now, I know you've taken your mic off, but I can't hear. No, nothing from Wyn. This is always a bit dangerous, isn't it? Oh, there we go. There we go. There you are, sir.
Well, you can see me, but can you hear me?
We can see you and hear you now. Yes, it just took a few seconds.
I don't know why that was. Okay. So apologies. I am involved in innovations and have been for several years. I mean, the biggest point for me this morning really is the question of finance. Yeah, you can find small seed, sorry, not even seed, 5, 10K, 50K and so on. But if you start looking at something that's in the millions, I'm afraid it's a very, very difficult position to be in.
Just introduce yourself, Wyn. Great comment, but tell us where you're from.
Right, sorry, apologies. So I'm CEO of Ddiwydiannol, which means industrialised in Welsh, and Cydweithio, which is collaboration. And the reason I established that company 3 years ago was to collaborate and bring together SMEs, small businesses in Wales, to work collaboratively on projects rather than start from scratch and try and grow organically. I've got several things on the go currently, some of which are public, some are not. The biggest problem, which I'll come back to, really is raising serious finance. If we were in America now, Silicon Valley, and my previous company was and is now owned by a Silicon Valley company, we'd be in a different position. We'd probably find people to say, here's £1 million, get on with it.
I think you've raised an
problem. Yeah,
you have raised an interesting point there. As we're not, Wales doesn't exist in isolation, and sometimes money will come from further afield, and clients and customers. So we do have to make sure that we're not trying to resolve this in a slightly parochial way, that we do look at external sources. But
well,
yes,
certainly one project
yeah.
that I've got on the go currently, which I can't discuss, although if you check my LinkedIn profile, you might be able to join some dots from Company's House, is on the verge of raising some finance, but it's international. It's not Chinese. Maybe I shouldn't make that comment, but I have. But it's not UK finance, and it's in the rather large number of millions.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Potentially could help, could have a significant impact in this area of South Wales, in fact.
Excellent. Thank you. Gary, you've turned your camera on. I'm going to assume that means that you don't mind me coming to you next and introducing yourself.
No, that's fine. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, no, I know Wyn. Hi, Wyn. Good to see you again, and you survived the COVID pandemic. Yeah, my question is basically, it's like what Wyn is saying, that we don't seem to be having in Wales, although the IPA and so on and so forth. And I think there's been a few cases where people have gone to the various authorities and there's been not a satisfactory outcome. And what I'd like to see is these wonderful inventions that's coming out is how we're going to take them from here and put them into the markets. Like, for instance, I work in Africa, and my system, if you go to Bill Gates' toilets, although it's not a medical, but it is from my point of view, it's a sanitation side. It helps people, it enhances people's lives. It's under social corporate responsibility. And I would like to see, now that we're out of the European market, and apparently there's a setup now come into, I think it's Cardiff, that's going to be for export of all items that's coming out of Wales, because we're in a 4-horse race here: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And I think we need to have a body to how we can put these inventions out to these various countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. I just want to, so I can see that Richard Brain is also in the room. I'm obviously picking on companies, manufacturers. Richard, are you able to turn on your mic?
Hi, Gwen, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Do you have any questions for the panel or any comments about what's been mentioned so far?
Nothing that's necessarily been mentioned so far. I have emailed some of the members on the panel just in regards to collaborations. Our sort of company, supplies UVC and ozone disinfection robots. So in terms of the marketing aspect of our product, we have a marketing team that has taken the product to market. So it's not necessarily a startup as such. Like, some of the ideas and innovations here is something that's already started.
Yeah, and quite very timely. So you've got a product, and it's it's about hygiene and contamination. So it's a timely time to be promoting that. So no, it's great.
And we've implemented it across the healthcare sector already in pharmacies, schools, and hospitality sector ready for opening. So it's just about seeing what we can offer the NHS as well and other healthcare sectors to hopefully help combat what we're all going through.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much. So Alan Thomas, I'm just going to see whether you've got any comments, because we've heard from the manufacturers, but I know, Alan, you have a different perspective. So are you able to turn on your mic and introduce yourself? This is always very dangerous, isn't it? Just to be able to pick on people at random, but right, Alan, you've not turned on, so I'm gonna skip past just for the sake of timing, because I want time for each of the panel members to have closing remarks. So you've met a few of the people in the room, and you can see that there is a challenge around finance, and it seems like a challenge around small finance. But the other thing that I'd like to pick up on, because I think we've got the expertise in the room, is the need to collaborate and the need to join and create partnerships in medical products. And so if I can ask for your closing remarks, and if I can start with Sean, because I've already heard a presentation from Sean this morning, and so I know he's absolutely on the collaboration theme at the moment. And just if you'd like to just share your thoughts with how important it is to collaborate to get medical and life science products into market.
Well, collaboration for us is key. I would say ARCH, for those who don't know, is a collaboration between Swans University, Hywel Dda Health Board, and Swansea B. And one of the things that we're looking at the moment is how we help to resolve some of the challenges that we've got, particularly ones that we created by COVID. But we were already in a little bit of a pickle before that. So there's so what we're looking at is how we can bring industry insight, academic insight, and health insight together to look at some of these challenges and how we can resolve things. I think what that hopefully will give us is commercial opportunities to develop things, whether that is how health contributes to that. I'm not quite sure, but certainly it contributes expertise and opportunity to test and evaluate and create new things. And so, if we were trying to do this on our own, we would be absolutely nowhere. And so what we're doing, and what I've tried to do over the last few years, is to create opportunities for industry to collaborate with healthcare to develop new and innovative ideas. And I think that listening to people like Simon, Mark, and Mike on the call this morning has been fascinating for me. Having that conversation sort of again, so I was thinking about it earlier. It's a little bit like woodpeckers. They exist. You see them on the telly. You can hear them, but it's not often that you get to stand there and look at them and talk. Yeah. So I think that type of collaboration is the only way forward for these things.
Absolutely. And if I had a slide, there's a diagram that I use quite a lot, and I didn't create it, I acquired it, but it's a picture of a sine wave. So you've got to think of a horizontal line, and then you've got to think of a wave going above and below the line as the product progresses to market. And essentially that is describing the transition from academic and clinical on the one side of the line to the private sector for product development and for manufacturing on the other side of the line. And it does just show that the path for a product in life sciences transitions between academic and industry, and then clinical and industry throughout its life cycle. So absolutely vital. Melissa, would you like to pick up on that, on collaboration?
Yeah, collaboration is everything. We're in the NHS, obviously, I don't need to say it, we're facing massive challenges. We can't carry on doing things the way we've been doing them. We need to do things differently. We need to innovate. We need to be reaching out and forging strong relationships. And when we talk about doing things differently, I mean some of those relationships perhaps need to be different as well. There needs to perhaps be more equity in those relationships than there has been previously. And we need to look at new ways of defining them. For me, it's all about making things better for patients. If I can't find a way to support my clinical staff in taking their ideas through to fruition and impacting on clinical care, then we fail. A good idea remains just that. It has no impact on patients. Totally agree with Sean. Me having a chat with Simon yesterday was massively helpful. Me having a chance to talk to, to Mark and whatever. The infrastructure is evolving so rapidly that we just can't know everything. But I always like to think I know a man who does. So using this event to broaden my collaborations has been massively valuable, and thank you for getting this organised and underway. But I think it is the future. Collaboration and innovate together, share risk, share reward, improve outcomes for patients. Absolutely.
Thank you for that. And I had the pleasure of joining a panel of people across academia, industry, and clinical experts, being quizzed by the Department of International Trade about a month ago. And what they really wanted to know is what's Wales' strengths, so that they can go off around the world and say, right, if you want to work on this topic, go to Wales. And they were looking for topics like medical devices or advanced therapies or biotechnology. They wanted us to pick technology strengths. And to a person, everyone in the room just kept repeating the same thing. And it was that our strength in Wales is that we have a network, we have a collaborative atmosphere, and it doesn't really matter. It's not a matter of a single front door. It's a matter of any front door. And you will get to the right expertise if you work with Wales. So, which was quite frustrating for the Department of International Trade, because that wasn't the agenda for the meeting. But we stuck to our guns, and we gave them a few technologies that we're particularly good at. But really, it was that close collaboration that mattered. Right, I'm going to go. Simon, would you like to give us some closing thoughts?
Very, very quickly. Yeah, collaboration's great. You get the designers involved, and you'll end up with a hopefully a really good product in the end. When you come to your patent attorney or IP advisor, know who's going to own it. Know who owns the invention. Don't be too hung up about who owns it, so long as you're getting something out of the project. So you do get people sometimes that are really, really hung up. I want to own this. Well, fair enough, but what do you want out of the project? You want your yacht or whatever, and do you need to own the IP to do that? So
sorry, Simon, I'm laughing because I was just thinking you were going to say collaboration is excellent and it's essential, but don't tell anyone anything until you've talked to your patent agent.
Well, there is that as well. Good point. No, that's me done. Thanks, Gwen.
Excellent. Mike, would you like to give a closing comment?
Yeah, sure. Just sort of on the funding aspect, I guess. One of the advantages we have in Wales, we have organisations such as Development Bank of Wales who have funds to invest in businesses in Wales. We have various regional growth fund deals that where there's a lot of money now available potentially for investment. So, trying to work on those advantages of trying to get funding into Welsh-based businesses, I think is quite important. And the sort of collaboration between the private and public sector, which there seems to be there always has been a huge distrust of the private sector, I think, amongst public sector organisations, and I think working in collaboration a bit more between the public and private sector can hopefully unlock some more much needed funding for these type of projects in Wales.
I think so, absolutely. And working together builds trust. And if we have trust, then we can develop that collaboration, and then use it when we've got projects that we need to implement that collaboration.
Yeah, totally agree.
So, Mark.
Yeah, my turn.
Your turn.
So I suppose the interesting thing is, yes, I think everyone on this call would probably agree that collaboration is good. All the funded collaborations that people talked about are funding universities and health boards to work together with industry, but the industry isn't funded. The funding goes to the universities, it goes to the health boards, and it's for them then to administer and decide where the money is spent. And I think that fundamentally separates the sort of the expertise in the private sector from the academics and the health boards. I think and this is more government probably more than the health boards, but if you're going to fund a collaborative project and you're not going to include funding for private sector organisations at the outset, you're kind of self-defeating yourselves. Obviously, the universities and the health boards, they'll get a pot of money, and then they'll go, right, how can we best spend this? And there's always going to be some vested interest in going, well, if we spend it predominantly inside the health board and predominantly inside the university, that's best for the university and best for the health board. It might not necessarily produce the best results, but clearly the funding being spent internally is better than spending the money externally. And I think the government needs to switch. The difference between all the projects we've ever worked on where we've worked with universities, and there's been numerous ones with university spin-outs, that it's always been a secondary function, spending money outside rather than a primary function. And all the, there's been some huge funded projects, £25 million funding some university projects in the past, which have directly competed with design consultancies in Wales, which is completely bizarre. And that seems to have died down a little bit. But if they're not going to focus right from day one on ensuring private sector involvement, and that means funding them directly, not sort of living off the crumbs that happen to fall off the table from these projects. And I think that's the big thing that fundamentally needs to change. And the difference between that and what we've just done with the University of South Wales is the Welsh Government funded the University of South Wales to do the academic work, to do the research, to do the assay development, and they funded us directly to do the product development. So we weren't dependent on the university saying, yeah, well, we can only afford to spend 10k or 12k. We told people what it was going to cost, and the Welsh Government funded us directly. And that's the ultimate collaboration. The money comes in, it goes to the sections that need it. The job is done in a lightning timescale in reality, and that was entirely because we had funding delivered to us directly rather than what we could have, what the university could afford to spend with us. I think that makes a huge difference.
Okay, Melissa, are you going to keep it quick, because I'm going to try and close?
Very quick. I think this is where some of sort of the Innovate UK funding awards and things which actually have to or can be led by an industry partner are quite useful. We're looking at putting in for a couple of funding awards at the moment where we're doing collaborative bid with an industry partner, and actually they're going to get the money and then pay us for what we do. So it's a bit of so those are useful collaborations, but totally agree other than that, Mark, but that's one way around it.
Absolutely, there are funding mechanisms pointing at industry, and we need to utilise those and at the right time during these collaborative projects. Okay, so I'm going to finish it there. I'm going to say we've got the expertise in the room and in the country, and we've got the teams that Mike mentioned in terms of having the right expertise in the teams. Collaboration seems to be, dialed in. We are very good at collaboration. We've got the processes developing. We need so all of those I'm giving a tick for. We need to work on how to fund innovation projects so that everybody in the room, all of the experts in the room, get reimbursed fairly, and that is going to be a combination of Innovate funding, of Welsh Government funding, and of investment, and either from the development bank or from sources that Mike can point you in the direction of. So awful lot to talk about, as there always is with the topic of innovation, but I just want to say thank you so much. It's been a unique opportunity to bring together the professional services and the clinical expertise in the room, and thank you very much, and we'll continue this conversation and this debate, no doubt. Please take an hour and enjoy the sun. I'm just having a look. Yeah, we have got a bit of sun outside down in South Wales, and then we've got just one session this afternoon. It's from 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock. Sean's back. Can't get enough of him today, but I think Sean's helping out Tom James, so the two of them together can deliver the workshop on learning from the pandemic, the NHS Wales COVID-19 Innovation and Transformation Study, which is how we started the conference, with the chief executive of the NHS saying just how good the report was. So we're expecting a lot from you this afternoon, Sean. But until then, grab a sandwich. We've got that this afternoon, and then tomorrow we've got Digital Day. So thank you very much, and I'll stop there.